Thank you so much for coming out to the DCA's election forum this evening. We're really pleased to have you here. Would like to certainly welcome Mr. Mansfield, Mr. Koontz, Mr. Shores, and Mr. Goforth. Thank you for participating. Mr. LaBeouf and Ms. Jones elected not to participate in the forum this evening. I would like to review with you kind of the protocol that we've established for this. First, I'll ask if you would put your phones on silent. We will be recording this session, and we're going to make it available probably on a YouTube so that those who didn't attend will have an opportunity to see the answers to these questions and the candidates' positions as well. Eddie Harrow, you probably know Eddie. He's been moderating these forums for many years, and he's agreed to do that again this evening. Thanks to many of you who submitted questions through our website. We have a great list of questions for the candidates, and it's going to give us an opportunity to really understand some of the critically important positions regarding Middlesex County. The format is each candidate will have 5 minutes to give an introduction. Then the question and answer session will be allowed up to 3 minutes to answer each. We will not allow questions from the floor. And at the end of the session, each candidate will have 3 minutes to essentially give a summary and final remarks.
Thank you for coming here again tonight. I thank the candidates for being here. I do want to point out, as I always try to do, we do have a special visitor, Mr. Keith Hodges. Keith, please stand. Keith has represented us in the House of Delegates now for, I think it's comfortable for me to say, many years. And Keith, we thank you. I am going to begin on our left with our Board of Supervisor candidates. And Mr. Mansfield, you may begin.
Thank you, Mr. Harrow. And thank you, Deltaville Civic Association, that made this debate possible. In our democratic system of government, it is only through discussion of the issues that we, the people, are able to make a sound decision in the question of who most responsibly represents us. But unfortunately, Marcia Jones and Bob LaBeouf decided to boycott this debate. I believe that it is truly a slap in the face, not only to the dedicated people of the DCA who worked so hard to provide this information, but to all the citizens of our county. Note I said all the citizens of a county. I am running for Supervisor, Saluda District, but I sincerely believe my decisions must be for the benefit of the entire county as well as my district. Just this afternoon, I picked up my Southside Sentinel and read Marcia Jones and Bob LaBeouf ad entitled DCA Forum. Marcia, you said in the ad that you know us and you know our positions. No, we don't know your positions. In fact, you don't seem to have any positions. And if you do, you certainly didn't state them in your bio. So Marcia, don't be slamming the dedicated staff at the DCA for trying to help the people of our county make a critical decision of who best represents their views for the next 4 years. If you are too unassured of your position to defend them in a public forum. Now, in a totally different vein, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. During my entire 40 years of industrial career, most of my projects were focused on cost savings. These efforts resulted in 28 domestic and foreign patents, as well as a chance to work on military aerospace projects. I worked for leading Fortune 500 companies such as Allied Chemical, E.I. DuPont, Quaker Oats, and Anheuser-Busch. I have pledged to continue this same focus with our county, and I can point to successes that we have, did, or will save money, lots of it. My ballpark guess is over $4 million. I have handouts to prove it. Now I will discuss some of the initiatives that I believe the county must complete. As I said, I'm also supporting data as handouts if we need to discuss any of these subjects in detail. Middlesex County must stop the use of single source purchasing, i.e. the PPEA system. We must go back to real purchasing. Our purchase of the elevator shaft or elevator is very indicative of our need to return to decent purchasing. I've also been a leading advocate of protecting the Potomac Aquifer and lobbied for a 10-year plan that would save 12.75 billion gallons of water, while providing the West Point paper mill with $3.2 million cost savings. DEQ has been my biggest hurdle and has refused to even have a hearing on this twofold beneficial plan. For a long-term solution, I certainly support HRSD's plan that would provide 1.5 million gallons per day of regenerated water by 2028 and stop the loss of this individual resource. Salt intrusion, land subsidence, and even the reduction of nutrients entering our waters. Let's restore the YMCA funding, and let's get off of this kick to cut them $15,000. Believe me, the $15,000 is not going to turn the tide on our county budget. And think of the good that the YMCA does. Why in the world would we take them on when they do so much good? School funding. Of the 10 surrounding school districts, we are consistently in the top 2 in the state achievement test. Yet our salary scales are among the lowest. We must pay our teachers a competitive wage for this region. And the elected school board and the Board of Supervisors must again meet, at least on an annual basis, to discuss the school budget jointly, which, by the way, is 70% of our total budget. By contracting the installation of solar panels at no cost to our schools, the county will save $60,000 per year for the next. Pardon? Okay. By the way, I'll be glad to tell you the rest of them because I've got more.
I think you'll have the opportunity.
Thank you.
Mr. Koontz.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming tonight. We'll talk about a lot of things tonight, as there are a lot of important things to talk about that are going on in Middlesex, but I'm going to focus, after talking a little bit about myself in my opening remarks, I'm talking about our economy, our local Middlesex economy. I'm not from here, I'm a come here, but I come from a place that reminds me a lot of this place, and it's part of the reason I chose to come here. I wanted to raise my family in a rural setting with a stable economy, with good schools, and with people who I was able to get to know very quickly, because everybody knows everybody down here, and that's rural living, and I like that. What I do for a living is I build solar power plants, commercial and utility scale, across the East Coast. And in doing so as a project manager, I manage budgets in excess of $20 million. I have full profit and loss responsibility. I am in charge of procurement, which is something that I feel this county could do a lot better at. I'm in charge of construction. We've got some pretty big capital improvement projects that we're taking on here in the county, at the schools and with the water system. And there's a lot going on with sewer as well, and I think I would be an invaluable asset to the community in providing some of my construction background to those efforts. But in focusing on employment around here, before I jump into that, I want to ask you 2 questions, and if you wouldn't mind just showing of hands, how many of you made the arduous trek from Hartfield 7 miles up the Puller Highway? Thank you, and sincerely, I say that tongue-in-cheek, but sincerely, I think it's a really important thing, and I'll bet 50 years ago, these kinds of rooms were filled with concerned constituents that wanted to get to know who these people that might be leading their community are. And I just think it's abysmal that 2 people would say they can't make it down here for a number of reasons that I think everyone sees through. And I just think it's important to not focus necessarily on who's not here in terms of who's running, But let's think about how we can fill this room as well, because you're going to get more accountability and more transparency out of your leadership when you're talking to your friends at cocktail parties about who are you voting for. Are you going to be there on November 7th? Have you heard what the supervisors are doing? That is a responsibility that we all have as civilians, to get people talking about this, getting younger people talking about this, and understanding that complaining about government is something that everybody does. Doing something about it means coming and hearing about what the candidates intend to do with your money and your county. And so I would encourage you all to maybe not dogpile on Bob and Marcia as much as talk about it with your friends. We all need to know what's going on in our community, and we all need to take responsibility that we understand what's going on. And as part of that, I'll mention, I think we should change the time of the Board of Supervisors meetings so that many of us who are working have an opportunity to go and see what's going on. I got involved in this. I never wanted to become a politician. I still don't want to be a politician. I want to be your neighbor who's concerned and listening to you, and not condescending, but listening to what your concerns are. So I'm not calling myself a politician. But that said, in terms of our economy, we have a lot of hardworking folks here. There's about 3,305 full-time workers in Middlesex County, according to Q1 2017 statistics from the Virginia Employment Commission. We are historically always less unemployed than the state average and the national average. So these people want to work. Your neighbors want to work. They want to work so much that 86% of them commute out of the county. And that number's not getting better. And our current board, with the exception of present company, has largely been silent on this point. What are we going to do to create more jobs? What are we going to do to make sure that the kids coming out of our high school who aren't going to college are prepared to enter the marina industry, to go work at the metal company, to go work at the cabinet company? There are jobs here, and there are plenty of people coming in from Gloucester and even Norfolk to take these jobs. So we have to work with our schools. We have to fund our schools. We have to put our schools together with our community, with our employers, and link these things up so that these kids are ready to come work here, come raise a family here, come pay taxes here, and they don't have to move away and then say, well, geez, my parents live way over on the eastern coast of Virginia, but I had to move to Texas or New York to get a job. That's what's happening. But on the positive side, another thing's happening. People like me, and I don't think you want a whole county of people like me, but maybe a couple more, are able to work remotely, okay? And we can make a good living. There's a lot of jobs where you can work from home, and you can bring those tax dollars to a place that you choose to live. I chose to live here because I wanted to shoot roots. I chose to live here because the schools were good, and because I wanted to live in a rural community. And there are more people like me that would choose Middlesex if they knew about it.
Thank you, Mr. Koontz. Dr. Shores, you've got 5 minutes.
All right, all I can say is that my sister, Diane Ruark, and my wife went to the football game tonight at West Point. They didn't ask my opinion. I was just there to see you to go. I'm a come back here. I was born in Urbana. My family's from Tangier Island. And I was the last in my class at Middlesex High School. But the important thing is that I was the quarterback of the first 11-man football team. And let's see, how many were on that team? Billy, I think, Norton was on it. He was one of those. And so then I went off, joined the Air Force, and then after that proceeded with my education at Randolph-Macon. Even though I was last in my class, I received my degree from Randolph-Macon after being in the Air Force. Then my bachelor in mathematics and physics from the University of Mississippi. And then my PhD in mathematics from the University of Mississippi. So there's hope, you see, no matter where you place in your class. But I think we have I know that a lot of people come down here for low taxes and things like that, and they cannot quite buy into so much money being funneled into the school board budget. So, well, not a lot. We have severe problems in there. underpay our help. You know, dedication. People say, well, it's the dedication that's involved. I understand that, but you still have to. And the thing that hurts our the educational system, even today, that we have so many women in the educational system teaching. And when many Board of Supervisors look at, here's the wife making, say, $35,000 to $40,000, and their husband makes $60,000 to $70,000, and they add those together, you see, they get the average salary. And so still today, the women are underpaid in the school system, and they are some of the best teachers you want in the school system. And we need to do something about that. Money doesn't solve all problems. We have nice facilities now, which took a lot of doing here. And our facilities, of course, are open to the people in the county. So if you pay taxes down here, they're available to you. We have 4 brand new tennis courts up there. And try to get people to live where I live, to get out and play at the times, you know, when school was not in session. But we used St. Clair Walker, the high school. We use these schools for the discussions, acting, and various things for the public. And it's a great benefit to our citizens to make use of these facilities. And so I've been on the school board now a long time. But it is hard to get someone to run to the school system. Very hard. I have tried, understand, to get people to run for the school system. But they just are not interested in involving in the time, and a number of people have kids in the schools. And sometimes they think that maybe that hurts the situation. But I think we have a very good school system. And there are times when we get support from the Board of Supervisors. And there's more times that we do not get support from the Board of Supervisors on that, to face the needs of the school system. But so, people say, well, we put so much in the school. Well, you have to. If you want to cut the budget at the school system, you know the quickest way to cut, don't have busing. That costs hundreds and thousands of dollars. But if you do that, then you'll have greater rebellion than that's going on with Donald Trump today. But we do have a very good school system. But you still have to have the funds because the times are changing. Kids, teachers, and all need facilities. And I just want to say just 1 minute. We do like Backpack Buddy. We do a lot of that stuff at the high school. That's just at the choir center. I have people involved in that. And we do a lot of things in that area of joining the teachers and so forth, get involved in the community of the county and really support the county. And a lot of our people to come down here to retire, I don't want to put them out. They may not want to have higher taxes, but they want to have good facilities, and they will help us. They help us already by participating in the school system on that thing. That's a non-political statement I just made all that, but that's it.
Thank you, Dr. Shores. Mr. Goforth?
Shores. That's an S on the end of that.
Shores.
Shores. Yeah.
Maybe I'm not articulate. Shores. I'll spell it from now on, Dr. I know them so well, I might end up calling them by their first names. David with the D.
Richard.
Richard. I'll get myself straight in a minute. Jim, go forth, please.
All right, thank you.
Richard.
And I do appreciate the opportunity to address the group, even though Dr. Shores and I are running unopposed. I accept every opportunity to talk about our school system. But first, I want to talk a little bit about myself. I'm originally from Kentucky, and yes, I did have a hillbilly accent. I lost it once I came to Virginia in '65. I graduated from Eastern Kentucky with a degree in physics and mathematics. I didn't get a doctorate, though. What was that? That's about the only thing I have in common with him, I guess. But we do have a good time on the board, and I appreciate him being there as a old educator, the same as me. I did play football, but we had 11-man football back when my father played, so that's no big deal.
That means I'm quite old, right?
I came to Middlesex in 1978 as assistant superintendent. A few years later, after the death of Mr. James Moon, I became superintendent. After retiring, I actually went back in the classroom, and yes, I did double dip. I drew my retirement and taught mathematics in the neighboring county. Started a golf team over there, and I'm continuing to be an avid golfer. This year, I volunteered and started a middle school golf team. I have 8 young men. We've played 2 matches so far. We lost our first one by 1 stroke. Although there were 4 teams, we came in second by 1 stroke, and then we beat Lancaster heartily in our next match. We've got 3 more to go, and I am thoroughly enjoying it. I like being on the school board. I take a very active part. For years, I've been actually on the board for 20 years. We planned, met periodically to develop a career and technical center to serve the neighboring counties. We're not large enough to offer a number of programs, but when we pool our resources together, we can. 3 years ago, we created Bridging Communities, which is in New Kent County. If you watch Channel 10 every once in a while, you'll see New Kent advertising that they've got a career and technical center in their system. It actually serves 6 counties. I'll not name the counties, but I'm sorry, 1 city, West Point, or town, West Point, and the rest are counties. We send 32 students over there, half-day program. There are 8 different programs. All but 1 of them offer a college credit. All of the school systems, except for Middlesex, have a difficult time for their students to meet the entry requirements for the community college because it's college credit. Middlesex has no problem. We always meet our number of students. There's energy certification that the students have to meet. All of our seniors this past year passed that energy certification or continued their education. There was 1 student that did not pass, but he's gone on to college. I also am a member of the newly formed board for the Middlesex Foundation. I hope you've read a little bit about that. We've gotten our nonprofit status, 501(c), and we will be soliciting funds to do similar to what they did in Lancaster, to create a workforce housing that will help us recruit young teachers. That, believe me, is a problem. They don't have a place to live. When they come here, they have to commute. They don't feel like they're part of the community, and sooner or later they leave us. So we've been a training ground, although we do have a very good teaching staff. I'm also on the finance committee for the school, 2-member committee that meets regularly with the Board of Supervisors. It's usually about monthly. We met last week for an hour and a half. One outcome of that has been very beneficial in my opinion, because we've been able to communicate back and forth about our problems and anticipate before that budget rolls around what our needs might be. We've had several people try to get us to form a NJROTC program. Oh, that's 5 minutes already? Okay. I've got another couple of, but I'll stop because I'll use it at the end. For our Board of Supervisor candidates,
And Mr. Mansfield, I will begin with you. Mr. Koontz, you will have the same question. The question is, in your opinion, what are the most serious short-term and long-term problems facing our county, and how would you deal with them? You have 3 minutes, Mr. Mansfield.
I think our longest term problem is water. And I think I have beat the bushes on this more than anyone else. Very happily, I think there is a long-term solution, which is HRSD, with their ability to regenerate water, which will be very, very helpful, we can actually regenerate more than we're taking out. So I think we can do that, but it's going to be an expense, and I really am going to ask all of you all to really be responsive to HRSD as much as you can. Short-term water problems, with the Potomac Aquifer. I was very disappointed this year. I put through an idea that would save 12.75 billion gallons over the next 10 years with the West Point mill draw. And coincidentally, if you really looked at drawing 12.75 billion gallons, you would also find that you save money by not having to pump that up. So this actually would save the mill money, $3.1 million worth of it over the next 10 years. So it's in West Point Mill's best interest to follow this program. They have said they can do it. They said that they can get it down from 20 million gallons per day draw down to 16. The only thing that I was asking in this was that they would be able to do it in the next 2 years rather than the next 9 years and 3 months. Another problem that is unbelievable to me, and I think John will back me up on this, is the way we purchase things. We have this system called the PPEA, which...
30 seconds.
Pardon?
30 seconds.
Oh, thank you. The PPEA, which we spent $5 million without a second estimate on. Those are the two greatest problems I think are facing our county at this moment.
Thank you. Mr. Koontz, do you want me to repeat the question?
No, I'm good. I'm going to bifurcate it into 3 sections because I think there's a really, really long-term issue. I think there's a long-term, and then I think there's a really, really short-term issue. And I would echo, despite not being an engineer like Pete, I've been working as the operator of the water and sewer at the coves at Wilton Creek for the last 4 years, and I've been watching the test wells down there go shallower and shallower and shallower. We have a serious water issue. I think it's a long-term issue. I think, though, we need to take it seriously now, so none of these kinds of projects happen quickly. We've seen that with getting water out to Deltaville. I'm sure I was probably a toddler when people were first talking about putting water out to Deltaville. So I think long-term, the water issues that Pete is referring to, very long-term, those need to be addressed, but we need to start thinking about them now. Medium-term, I really go right back to the economy and job creation, and I tie into that the notion, the kind of work that Melvina Robinson is doing at the high school with the high school kids and introducing them to marina owners and introducing them to other employment opportunities here and grooming them so that we can take those kids that aren't going to go to college and give them an opportunity to work here. That's just one part of what we should be doing in terms of making sure that the investment, the 80% of our budget that we use our tax money for that goes into our school systems is treated as an investment as opposed to an expense item. And right now our current Board of Supervisors, present company excluded, is treating our school investment as if it's some expense that we just have to take on. We should look at it as an investment because we are getting a return on that, but we're losing the return if the only place they can find a job is somewhere outside of Middlesex County. And then the easiest answer, and maybe this question was a softball thrown in by my friend somewhere out in the crowd, but the short term is really simple. We have 33 days until an election, and we have an opportunity to change one or two of the seats on the Board of Supervisors, and the one that I am challenging for, I think, is critical to turning around how this community works together, how this community takes feedback from the many, many experienced people in this community that run agencies, businesses, who bring experience from all over the globe into this county. To sit there as a Board of Supervisor and not listen to all that experience in the room is an atrocity. And I had no intention of running for government until I got talked down to that way, and I thought, geez, we deserve better. So there's our short-term problem.
Board of Supervisor candidates now. This time, Mr. Koontz, I will start with you, and I will tell you, if this was an opportunity to get a grade on an essay question, it's wide open. What are the factors on which you base your decisions, or will you base your decisions as a supervisor?
So there are a myriad of issues facing the county, and those can change in a heartbeat. And we've got things that are developing rapidly. We've got things that have been going on for 20, 30 years. And I think each of those require a slightly different approach, and you have to be flexible, and you have to be willing to research the issues. You have to be willing to go out and get more information from the people who have lived longer, who have lived here longer, and who have experience with these issues more than any supervisor might. So I think you have to go out and listen to the people and solicit their opinions and understand the backstory. No one supervisor, and this is why we have 5 supervisors, no one supervisor can make these decisions by themselves, and we protect ourselves as a community by electing 5 supervisors and not electing them to a life term. So for me, when I'm going to make a decision, if it's a decision about funding the schools, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to develop a relationship with the other people that are involved, and I'm going to make sure that if we need to meet more often, we meet more often. And if I don't understand an issue, I'm going to go to the experts and I'm going to say, explain this to me. And the other thing that I'm going to do as part of my decision is I'm going to recognize that what makes a decision difficult is that you have to acknowledge somebody's got to pay for something. And to get all of these people and all the people that aren't showing up here but that will write letters to the editor to understand why we're making a decision, we have to go out there, not just during campaign season, but during our tenure on the board, and make sure we're explaining, here's my decision process, here's my way of thinking. What do you think? What am I missing? That, to me, is part of the decision-making process that is critical in any one decision, but there's so many things facing us right now. I just can't understand how a supervisor can't be at more functions 7 miles up the road at a forum, listening to what these people have to say, the pre-written questions. And I am happy to stand afterwards and talk to anybody. I'll give you my card. You can call me. You can email me. You can wear one of my shirts, my bumper stickers, my signs.
Thank you.
You get my point.
Thank you. Mr. Mansfield, I'll ask it again. What are the factors on which you based your decisions as a supervisor?
I think I will echo what I just heard from John. We really must learn to listen to our people. But we must also just use some rationality. Let's look at cutting the funds to the YMCA. We successfully cut $15,000 off the budget. We've got a $21 million budget. Is that really going to correct a deficit? At the same time, we spend $2 million more on a radio system than we need to because we're too lazy to get a second estimate. We're making decisions. We don't have a good method of purchasing because we don't follow the format that we need to in purchasing. We look at our boating industry. One of the most important industries in our county. We were the premier place to come dock your boats. We've lost that. We're talking about, well, if we drop our taxes, good heavens, that will cost another penny on our real estate tax. Absolutely not. Our boating industry is worth, according to VIMS, is worth $50 million a year in economic activity. I believe that 1 cent would be, we would be able to make that back up with the $50 million. I've heard in our Board of Supervisors meeting, well, Pete, as we lose boats, the chances of losing more boats get less and less. Well, you know,
Checks out mathematically.
That is really, that seriously is really scary for that to be the reason. Okay. Let me tell you, and it's also wrong. This last year, we lost the greatest amount of tax that we have in the last 5 years. So it's not declining. If anything, it's getting worse. And by the way, I have the documentation to show you if you wish.
Going back to the supervisors now, Mr. Mansfield, I'm going to begin with you. And I think these two questions almost go together because I've got a question here that addresses the 72% of our workforce which commutes outside of the county. But the specific question is, how would your platform promote building our labor pool, encourage small business growth, and building a county-wide team that includes schools, businesses, county government to address and solve the economic decline in Middlesex County?
The economic decline, unfortunately, is self-afflicted. We had the best program for boating. We had training programs in our schools to teach marine electronics, marine engine repairs, and we haven't really followed through on that. We haven't followed through with trying to stop the exodus of boats. We haven't developed new industries or new trades in our county. We do have somebody that Michelle Brown in our group that is supposed to be developing businesses, and I think we need to support her in every way we can. But we really need to, as John talked about, we need more training. We also need to start generating businesses that will keep our young folk here.
Thank you, Mr. Mansfield. Mr. Koontz?
This would have been a lot more interesting as a debate because I'm going to agree with a lot of the things that you've already heard. But I think it's a two answer question: leadership and involvement. I'm already involved, and I'll tell you right now, I'll commit to you, elect me, don't elect me, I'm still staying involved in this community. At the end of the day, I'm working with Melvina Robinson and some marina owners, and we are trying to get these two entities together to understand, hey, this kid's not coming out of college, but he wants to understand what he needs to learn to get a first ground level job that he can climb up through the ranks, maybe learn the skills and the trades that are involved, but he's got to work his way through that. And so what we're doing with Melvina and that program, and it's not just me, it's a lot of other people, but I'm involved and I'm leading with it and I'm talking to the community and the business owners. And that's what I'm talking about when I say leadership and involvement. It's just the notion of we all understand how this could work. Somebody's got to pick up the pieces and make it work. And if that means, tonight I'm Board of Supervisors, tomorrow night I'm at the CTE. I'm also on the Rappahannock Community College's Technical Advisory to talk about how we have more technical job training. There's so many things that we can do, but it takes listening to an idea like Dr. Shore's. I'm a reformed carpenter myself, and I love the fact that I can still butcher wood. But I'll tell you what, I went into the wrestling room because I saw that it was an abysmal state in the high school, and I saw that our team was doing awesome, and I thought, man, what would be greater than for those boys to have a cleaned up wrestling facility that's currently in what used to be the shop. There's still the dust collector in there from all the wood shavings, and in doing that investigation, that leadership, that involvement, I went in the back room with Greg Harrow, and he showed me all these tool belts. And I said, well, if you're not using them, Habitat for Humanity would love them. But let's not strip those resources away. Let's learn that Dr. Shores is interested in that. And as a Board of Supervisor member, let's start a conversation. Let's lead. Let's be involved. Let's see what the community wants. Let's see if there are carpentry opportunities. Let's see the 50 largest employers. We have 3 hardware stores. Wonder what they're supplying. Maybe a lot of construction projects. Maybe there's another opportunity. My friends, the Pullmans, they always are out there hiring new carpenters, and they're struggling to find good workers. That's all we talk about. I'm tired of hearing it. And I'd like to get them more involved in talking to the high school teachers and saying, hey, the guy's got to know how to show up on time. The guy's got to know how to do some basic math. And at the end of the day, he's got to be interested in providing a quality product. If that's all he ends up with out of high school, let's find him a job. And let's have it right here in Middlesex. But you have to lead and you have to be involved.
Back to the Board of Supervisors. Mr. Koontz, I believe you get this one first. That's a good one. It's 2 questions rolled in one because they all are intermingled here. Explain your position on the boat tax. If you are in favor of eliminating it, would it apply to all boats or just large boats? How will the county make up for the lost funding or reduce costs to compensate? And I'm going to throw into that question, because we're nearing the end of our time, is that marinas and restaurants, gift shops are taking a huge economic hit because of the loss of boaters, and as a result, the county is sharing the steadily declining revenue. What's your plan for making up the difference?
So what I would do, and what I think a 5-person Board of Supervisors will come to an agreement on, are very likely a different thing. That said, I think we need to zero it out. More likely what will happen, should I get elected, and I hope that Pete also gets reelected, I think we have a chance to begin to signal to the marina community that we are going to work with the existing board, because that's our option, and we are going to come to a solution that demonstrates that we have heard them. We're not waiting for any more data to come in. We've got data. I have wasted so much paper on the data that I have on the boats. I've got so many people in the community telling me what the data is. It's clear that we're having an impact on an industry that is, potentially was, the biggest industry in our community. Less than 10 years ago, this was the biggest port between Annapolis and Fort Lauderdale. How do you look that in the eye and say, I'm going to do nothing and watch them all sink? Pound sand. So my point is that I'm pretty clear. I think we need to get rid of it. I'll take some hits from people on that because of the second part of the question. Well, then where are you going to find the money? I'm going to find the money by going out to all of you people and talking to you about why our property tax rates are where they are. We all want them to be low. I don't want to pay any more than I have to. I'm just like everybody else. But at the same time, I understand what that money can do for our community. Because we, as a Board of Supervisors, have to convince you, as our constituents, that we are responsible stewards of that money. Responsible stewardship does not mean I cut the hell out of everything and there you go, you have low taxes. It's making the point that investing in the boating community means we can get back to $50 million of economic activity, that we can have more restaurants, more employees at restaurants, we can have more electricians working on boats and raising families here and paying taxes here. Those taxes don't have to go up significantly if we have a tax base. But if we erode the tax base, as we have now for years and years, we are going to have to raise taxes. But somebody has to do the hard work of looking these people, our neighbors, in the eyes and explaining it. And debating people who are not going to change their minds and they're going to tell me I'm crazy. But I am going to be honest with you, I think we have to do something to save the only industry that we have that is of any size. We have other things that we need to do, but in terms of looking at the major industry that we have, we can't keep looking at them and telling them to go pound sand.
There's not much more I can say after that. That was excellent. Yes, if we zero out the boat tax, it would cost us 2 cents on our property tax. If we go to 56 cents per hundred, down from 98 cents per hundred, it would cost us 1 cent. That's not much when you consider that we're talking about $50 million in economic activity. There's really not much more I can say. If we had the votes, the right way to go is down to zero on the boat tax. I'm not sure that we can get there. If we can't get there, the next best thing, John, is to do what you said, which is to go halfway and at least send the message to our boating industry that we're trying and will possibly do better next year.
Dr. Shores and Mr. Goforth, here's your question. It is a little long. If I need to repeat it, I will. Because the school board does not have the authority to raise taxes itself, describe how you think the Middlesex County Board of Supervisors taxing authority should make decisions about revenue, and think about the results and outcomes from the school system. How will you work, or how do you work, how do you think the school board should work with the supervisors, they again being the only taxing authority to facilitate this? Dr. George, you're first.
I think one thing people think when you have the lottery and things, they think all that money pours into the school board, and then we get to use it as we please. Well, that's not true. That doesn't come to us. Everything we do, money that we spend, has to go through the Board of Supervisors. And I'm not against that. I think that's a good idea because they are, in a sense, the funding body on that. And so I support that thing. But what was the other question you asked? It seemed so deep. It was non-mathematical, and I couldn't.
Is there a way, and I'll try to put this in a phrase differently, how do you work and how do you think the school board should work with the supervisors to facilitate perhaps getting more money into the school system?
That is so hard. I've been a victim of some of our past members. Fred Critton used to always hang me out there to shake in front of the public, and others did the same thing because I support. This sometimes working the Board of Supervisors come talk. We want to replace the bleachers in the school system. They were broken here and broken there. So we called the supervisors in to look at this thing. And Fred said, well, if you get a 2x4 and cut this off here and nail those two things there, people will be able to walk up this flight and come down the other flight. And that sometimes is what you're dealing with, whatever you want to get the supervisors on. I'm not saying all of them are like that, but I've been burned by them so much publicly, not knowing how to answer all the time, but burned by them publicly. And I'm just going to say this. Pete really works for the county. That means for the county people, including the school board. And if you want to read a good article in the paper, read the article on this guy here. I just met him tonight. But read the article in the paper and you will see that there are positive things coming from him that we can accomplish. So I'm telling you, if you don't support me, support him.
30 seconds.
Yeah, that's enough of that.
That was a hard question, but you got applause for your answer.
I said something.
Mr. Goforth, do you want me to repeat that?
No, I think I can handle it.
Okay.
First of all, back from Kentucky, the school board in Kentucky does have taxing authority. So I came to Virginia where they did not. I want to agree and disagree with Pete. We should meet as two boards, but it should not be the only time we meet. As I indicated before, the Finance Committee has started meeting on a regular basis, not waiting until the end of the year. I want to kind of echo what was said earlier too. There has been a change in the atmosphere of working between the two boards, and it's probably because they have somebody running against them. Okay? If that's an endorsement, you can applaud. I feel, though, that the communication has to be right from the beginning. Last year or 2 years ago, when we got a decrease in our composite index and we got a windfall from the state, that was blown way out of proportion. That, you know, the county had already given us that money, now they wanted it back, and that was a real fight. And I think that's why John really started to run, okay? I'm an expert on the composite index, and I've already projected in my mind that it's going to go down again. And so hopefully we're not going to have a fight over those state funds that come to this county for education and should be used for education, not to supplant. Thank you.
Just comment on the composite index, what it is. When you say those words, 2/3 of the people don't have an idea what you're talking about.
Composite index is the state's calculation of our ability to pay. Every locality has a composite index. It's based on true property values, income per capita and per student, and sales tax per capita and per student. I tried to make the point the other day to the Finance Committee because every once in a while we get criticized. Okay.
Finish your sentence.
You have 30 seconds.
That's important.
We get criticized because we have non-tuition students and tuition students from other counties. But they are an asset to our school division. In addition to getting money from the state for those individuals, we also lower our composite index because it's true values per student in ADM. So if you're a mathematician, you can see that lowers your composite index. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goforth. I'm going to start with you on this one. I think it's a very good question. The question is, do you or do the school board have any plans to improve the education of people or students planning to work in the trades since not everyone is capable of going to college or desires to go to college. What vocational courses does your high school presently offer, and how would you suggest expanding vocational course offerings?
As I mentioned before, we started the STEM program in New Kent. We presently have 8 programs. I'm going to list them for you. Criminal justice, culinary arts, diesel tech, HVAC, nurse's aid, pre-engineering, small engine technology, which is the only one of the 8 that does not give college credit, and then web design and coding. We've had our students in those programs be very successful, and we are a small school division. That question implies that we should be preparing students for that next step. They should be able to go to college, or they should have a marketable skill. Most every single one of the students that go through here will have some type of marketable skill. We have not been satisfied with that, though. We've increased the graduation requirements over and above the state requirements, in that they do have to have something other than the ability to go to college if they're not going to college. So it's going to be one or the other. We've got to prepare them for the next step. That's either work or college, and we feel like we do that. Adding more programs may not be the answer because we're small. It's difficult to do that. We provide governors programs, the program for advanced students through the community college, cooperating with other school divisions. We do special ed, cooperating with other school divisions. That's the problem with a small school division. But for our size, we have a wealth of programs.
Dr. Shores?
I'll just mention one that he mentions, the governor's school program. This is for students in mathematics and the sciences. Very successful, so we have about 3 or 4 students from classes 10, 11, and 12. And they get actually working at the community college, and they actually can earn an associate's degree from the community college before they graduate from high school. That is a very good program, and some of our top students are in that particular program. And you know, I would like to see carpentry taught. Is that so bad? I mean, we learned a lot of things by being in a class and doing woodwork when we were growing up. I remember making a trellis. I never could get, I'd always break one of them. But there are other guys in class who are very good, Robert Major and some of these people, excellent carpenters. But I've always thought that was a very basic programs that we had at Middlesex High School now does not exist there. I don't know whether it's cost or insurance or things like that, but it is a program that I think should be reinstated at the. We all need to do those, right? Like when you retire, don't you try to make things you've never made before? Yeah. And I have to go back and try to learn sometimes. But so I think, and Jim does a great job in the program that he talked about, and I think that his influence in always working and selling the program in our system has done a tremendous job in that area.
Thank you.
Let's see what we can do about that.
Dr. Shores and Mr. Goforth, and Dr. Shores, this is for you first. We seem to have a number of young, committed teachers in our schools, but the turnover seems very high. How can we keep good teachers, whether they're young or old, in my opinion, from leaving only after a few years?
Well, you know that if you're finished college and you apply for a teaching job in Pennsylvania, they send those people south. They come south because they want those teachers to have some experience before they get into the system. So they send them down here. So you have some temporary They come down here for that basic thing. Now, of course, we have a couple of guys that are in the school system that do the wrestling programs and history and writing and things like that and have stayed. But a number of these people then leave when something opens in Pennsylvania. And two, they change from system to system sometimes. Because if your composite index is low, then some of these other schools you see can pay a better salary. That means you get composite that's low, you get more money coming in from the state. They can pay these people more salaries. So they work. And for some reason that they think our teachers take, you have 3 months off in the summertime. That's not true. I taught 2 years of high school, but when my students came in for the first day of class, I had my bulletin board, all these related, how in the world you can use mathematics in this world. And but again, some of the, and you can't pay the men more. You see, the men actually argued that I think they should be deserved more. That's a false statement, first of all. But I think we have the summers off. Well, when I was teaching at the college level, I studied every summer. I was at West Point, Columbia, all those places studying for my own need. Not that the college paid. The government didn't pay for it. That made it nice. Okay. But I always studied to increase my knowledge of the area of mathematics and that thing, and computer technology and things like that. So, I don't know. That's it?
20 seconds.
Yeah, I'll give them the gym.
All right, I can use it.
I'm not a political
All right,
science
there's
person.
2 or 3 points I'd like to make. A young teacher who is still part of this community left us a year or so ago and went to West Point for a $6,000 raise. Okay? Their composite index is less than ours. It's been said many times they have more tuition students than probably twice or 3 times more than we do. And they do pay their teachers more. Now, what I have hoped is that she didn't get over there and say, well, if you need a teacher, this teacher over at Middlesex is good, why don't you recruit her? I hope that doesn't happen. Couple more examples. Last year, we had a young lady with 10 years of experience. And I already mentioned I'm a golfer. Some of the people I play golf with always has their opinion about whether teachers should get a raise or not. We got a 2% raise last year, plus a step. And they thought, well, I'm on Social Security. I'm not getting a 2% raise. I said, well, this 10-year teacher who wants to start a family is taking home $1,600 after all the deductions, health insurance, and all of that. And she can't support a family on that. One of the guys said, well, $1,600 every 2 weeks is not bad. I said, no, that's a month. All right, back to the Middlesex Foundation that we want to try to do workforce housing. That's going to help us recruit. It's not only going to help us recruit, it's going to help those young teachers be a part of this community. They'll be in a location where there are other young people and they'll have a social life. And so hopefully they will stay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Goforth. For the school board again, I think it's an interesting question. So I'm going to ask it, and you can use your entire time if you want to answer it. Do our high school graduates, in your opinion, have a good working knowledge of the founding of the United States, its Constitution as amended, and its Bill of Rights?
You want me to answer
Yes,
that?
sir.
All right. Personal experience. I've helped raise 4 girls, all lovely girls, all graduated from Middlesex High School. From what I know about them, your daughters, which I know personally, I think they do. Now, does that mean every graduate from the high school? Don't know. We don't have that as a requirement for graduation. They do have government. Pardon?
It should be.
Okay. There are a lot of people. Well, let me get back to the NROTC. That's a good program to teach that. And at budget time, we're going to look at it. Whether it's room for a program like that, I don't know. But it is a very worthwhile program. Would you not agree? Okay. Dr. Peter Gratz is leaving us.
Nope.
I'm trading places with my wife so she can come
This
in.
is our superintendent.
Okay.
If we
Ladies
have
and
problems,
gentlemen, I didn't see him come in. Dr. Gretsch is our superintendent of schools. Nice to have you.
Yeah, I was going to mention that he's already taken the first step in contacting the Marines that will help us set up that program and determine whether the cost is beneficial or the program would be beneficial, whether the cost it would make it beneficial, and whether we have room for it. Okay, we've mentioned several times, we're a small school division, there's only room for a certain number of programs. And Dr. Shores wants carpentry, and I have to be the one that's responsible. When I was superintendent, we didn't have the enrollment in that program, and we did away with it. It was building trades at that particular time.
are you on the school?
All right, did that answer your question?
Yes, Dr. Shores, do you want to respond to that question? Want me to ask it again?
Yeah, ask it again.
All right. Do our graduates, our high school graduates, have a good working knowledge in the founding of the United States, its Constitution as amended, and its Bill of Rights?
Oh, that'll be tough. We do have some classes that will emphasize that. Of course, one thing came up recently that they were doing away with cursive writing. Why didn't you start there? In cursive writing, you have to sign everything. But we do have, so that was news. But we do have teachers that, in their classes, take time to do cursive writing. In case you had questions on that, what they do. It never worked with me, the cursive writing. But it is a good thing. And I find when I went to Randolph-Macon now, so you can't just start here. When I went to Randolph-Macon now, signing out a book, they said, well, sign here in the library. Now, this is true. She said, what does that say? Is that your name or what? I cannot read it. So evidently we were way back there on cursive writing. But my guess is that you have some teachers that get into that more than others. I'm afraid it's not emphasized as much as it should. But I can't go out on a limb on that. We do have these Anderson boys. One of them's in history. Does an outstanding job in the history program on that. I mean, just writing and his lecturing and all. They do outstanding jobs for us, and they also do the wrestling team. But I don't know. I can't say for sure. Here I am on the school board, and I should go sit in on some classes, shouldn't I?
Well, thank you. It wasn't a trick question. I know a lot of people are asking.
Yeah.
It seems to be a lacking thing in our society today with many young people.
And they say the same thing about mathematics, but we put out some very good mathematics students at Middlesex High School. My goodness. It's,
Folks, we're going to wrap it up now, and I started with Mr. Mansfield, so now I'm going to start with Mr. Goforth. Mr. Goforth, you've got some remarks that you can make now. 3 minutes.
3 minutes? Yes.
Okay, you know, like I say, I've been on the board for 20 years, and it seems like a shame that you have to get petitions signed to run again. That's the hardest part, really. And like Dr. Shore said, every once in a while we feel like there ought to be a young person in the community that would want this job, but there doesn't seem to be. I get questions as I pass the petitions, and it is an opportunity to hear from the community. One question I got was similar to his building trades. One contractor wanted to know why we didn't turn out any brick masons. Well, we've never had that program. Matthews at one point had a program in brick masonry. They don't have it any longer. And you know, when I was young, I worked for a contractor. And every single one of those brick masons that I ran up and down the scaffold, taking blocks and mortar to, were trained brick masons by their families. Their uncle or their father taught them to be a brick mason. We can't do everything. As I indicated before, I think we do a good job in preparing students for that next step with the population that we have. One of the questions that I got that I anticipated and I prepared an answer for is how can we justify paying our superintendent $100,000 for 1,200 students? Have you heard that question before? Okay. Let me try to answer it. Whether we have 12,000 students or 1,200 students, the responsibility on that superintendent is the same. And he doesn't have, with 1,200 students, he doesn't have the large staff to delegate responsibilities to. So he has to wear many hats. Let me give you an example. At one time, I served as superintendent on a state advisory council with a representative from each region on that committee. There were a lot of superintendents from larger school divisions, and I knew more than they did. Why? Because I had to be the hands-on person. I didn't have somebody to delegate Title I, II, special ed, career and technical education. I feel that if the example was given is 1,200 student high schools, all we have. Well, I know 4 or 5 principals of 1,200 high schools that make more than 100,000. I know a high school principal of 600 students that makes more than 100,000. We need to pay our superintendent so he can live in this community and be part of the community and raise a family. Thank you.
Here, here. Thank you, Mr. Goforth. Dr. Shores?
I don't think I can add a whole lot to that. And I know that people are concerned that our principal, our superintendents leave about every 3 years. You've got to realize sometimes that these are also career people. They also increase in family size, so they look for higher salaries. It seems to, you know, and when our teachers get, that it's not quite right. But I would not, Jim has been a superintendent, I would not, I think they have to be dead brained to take that job to start with. Because you can't satisfy anybody, whether it's the teacher or whatever. It's very hard to satisfy. And I have never regretted the amount of money that they make. Not because I make more, but I have never regretted that. It is a time-consuming job. Yeah. And it's also time-consuming for the teachers, too. They do not necessarily have that summer off, you understand. You are to be prepared, and more so along the elementary classes. You've got to be more prepared when you walk into those classrooms. So, I always studied when I taught. I was always prepared. Did I use notes? Some people say, well, there's nothing wrong with using notes. That keeps you on track. You can bore them to death if you don't have a track on that. But I think they deserve it, and our teachers deserve more than they're being paid. And I'm telling you, until they get to the point that women shouldn't make as much money, it's not going to happen. That's a true fact. You probably don't believe that. That is a true fact. I know how they think. But my wife's not a teacher now. So don't say anything to her about this. It's a complex situation in the schools. You know, you've got a lot of track. Like I said before, you can cut down prices, but like that bus issue, cut out buses. That's a lot of money involved in that. Of course, they would hang us from the trees, though, if you cut it out, because a lot of people are dependent on that bus. Whether you're a large system or a small system, it's an expensive item. And I think our superintendents that we've had since I've been here that have done a very good job with the Middlesex County school system. On that. I really do.
Thank you, Dr. Short. Mr. Koontz?
I wasn't anticipating getting on the superintendent issue in my closing remarks, so I'll make sure I get part of my closing remarks out of the way. My business card is here. If anybody wants to know how to get a hold of me, phone, email, whatever, I want to talk about our county, and I'm serious. Don't hesitate to take a card and tell me what you're thinking. I have a website, koontzforsupervisor.org. I encourage you to look at it. You'll see that my main platforms are improved procurement process and results, increased transparency and accessibility of county leadership, increase county employment, restore funding to Middlesex County school systems, and address the boat tax. But on the superintendent, I have to almost recuse myself, and I say almost because I'm not going to recuse myself. I've gotten to know Pete pretty quickly. We have gone through a lot of superintendents in the last 5 years. I think there might be a link to how we pay them as well as how we treat them and how we fund the systems that they're killing themselves to take care of. Our superintendent gets $103,900. The average in the region is $125,000. So we're already paying him less than what the average in the region makes. I won't give you all the numbers, but I can run down through high school principal, elementary principal, director, assistant principal, teacher, clerical worker, paraprofessional, bus driver, nutrition worker. Do you want more? We pay less than everybody. That's how we treat our schools. And then we go and rampage in the newspapers and tell our superintendents that they should do more with less. They do have 1,200 students, and that is smaller than a lot of places in Loudoun County and Fairfax County, but it's not smaller than West Point and King, Queens. I mean, these are the same size counties that we're talking about. But you know what else he's dealing with? He's dealing with rising composite indexes that strip state funds, and a Board of Supervisors that, on the off chance that those state funds start to come back, we strip the county funds away from them. We already don't have a trainer at our football games. We had a kid at a track meet separate his hip coming here to play in our brand new stadium, and it took him 50 minutes to get somebody there. We had nobody there because we won't fund a trainer position. We don't have the IT position that the state mandates we should be funding. We won't fund it because these guys are having to make decisions with not enough money to do what's even mandated by the state. So I won't rampage on that entirely. But this notion that one or two people can write something into the letter to the editor and say something about the salary of somebody who's just another person working for our community and putting in more than what their salary commands. There's a lot of people at the YMCA who are also working really hard and leveraging very small amounts of county money to do good for this county. And we have to think about these things as investments, not expenses. And we have to ask for accountability, and we have to ask, what are we getting back as a community? But I think you'll find, like our emergency services departments, there's a lot of people volunteering and doing a lot for very little in this county. And if we shepherd the money correctly, we can get a lot more for this county, and we can do a lot better than we've done in the last 4 years, present company excluded.
Thank you. I'll follow up a little bit, one more little thing on the school funding. Of the 10 surrounding school districts, we are consistently within the top 2 in state achievement tests. Yet our salary scales are among the lowest of the 10, and we contribute less towards our teachers' health care premiums than most in our region. We must pay our teachers a competitive wage. Compared to Lancaster, Lancaster has pretty close to the same number of students that we have in our school system. And yet their school costs are costing 25% more than ours. That doesn't mean that the teachers are getting 25% less, but it means that our school board our school system has been doing an excellent job to keep our costs down. Of the 10 surrounding counties, all of which are about the same number of students that we have, by the way, the big exception is West Point, which is almost a private school if you look at the funding for West Point. We are one of the lowest of the 10. Our results are some of the highest. So thank you, school system, for what you're doing, and it's time for us to help you a little bit more. Thank you very much for putting this meeting on. I think that it's very important that you know where all our supervisors are coming from as far as our positions. The boat tax is very important, but so are many, many more things. By the way, the school buses is one of the things that I really took on. I thought that we should buy school buses that have been reconditioned. I have never won that argument, by the way. Thank you all for coming tonight, and do go out and vote, and I hope you vote the right way.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our forum. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, candidates. Lud, have you got anything else to say?
I'd just like to thank everybody in the community for making it possible for the Deltaville Community Association to have this facility as well as all the recreational facilities. Our tagline is swim, play, gather. It's through your donations and your participation and volunteerism and support of the Deltaville Community Association that these things are possible. So thank you very much.